All right, Grunch here again. Thinking about this election process again, the voting process specifically. I don't know if y'all used to do the same thing in school or not. As a child growing up, before you had them long drawn out questions and stuff like that on your tests, homework, or whatever else, you used to get either a X or a little check mark, like a tick, we used to call them. Tick meaning right or correct, X meaning wrong or incorrect. I don't know, maybe it's because I got into the whole religion and I guess you could say spirituality kind of way of living and thinking a while back. And I've been watching a lot of these elections from, I guess I've been actually around it. The results and not always lining up with seems to be the general, consensus as far as what people claim they wanted, promoted, voted for, and all them kind of things. Sometimes just going totally different at times, to the point where everybody come up with these stories and stuff. Oh, this happened, and the next thing happened, and that happened. Oh, this, but how it happened? If everybody feeling a certain way, claiming a certain way, either they extremely dishonest in what they saying they is or are, or something ain't right. What if this spiritual thing, I mean, God into everything, God is doing everything, but suppose this voting process secretly might be known to those who into politics like that, I should say it like that. Suppose it's more of a spiritual thing than actual, like, regular, simple, everyday kind of thing, like how we would probably consider it to be. Suppose these spiritual votings, y'all voting for, we be voting for, and they instructing us probably incorrectly to cast your votes a certain way by using an X. What if these spiritual beings who maybe only maybe say looking for what's right, looking for the right check as far as, your particular mark you put on the actual ballot. Suppose whilst we thinking they just counting the X's, suppose they actually supposed to be marking their choice as a check, a tick. And every tick that gets counted is counted probably by a spiritual being as the right or correct vote, and the X's are actually counted as no's. So if you go in there and you see these landslide victories and stuff, sometimes they're telling everybody to do this a certain way, but what if it ain't really that way? Now y'all can see that's on my right side, right? Couldn't really be on the left side because there ain't nowhere on that side to put it. But that's clearly where that is, to my right side. Now, last election, well, let's start with this election. I wasn't really too much into following up politics too much like that, per se, this election. But I did have my view that some people would definitely win that I've heard of. I don't follow it up to know all who was even involved like that. But a couple of the names that I do remember hearing and seeing and hearing about in this, that, and that thing, and say, quote unquote, expected to win and didn't. And then hearing the stories that quote unquote happened, I guess, as they was doing the count or after they was doing the count and stuff like that. And I thought back to the election before that, where I was like, I was pretty sure I know exactly what's going on, but it really feel like COI really gonna sweep the last election, I should say, the pandemic election, whatever. The one before that, maybe kind of little wishy washy sort of, Wasn't really too much into it, but I guess people was probably feeling FNM would have probably been. I wasn't really following too much, but I remember some other stories way back in the day. I can remember my earliest election, I guess, kind of experience actually having been around a little bit of the campaign and then voting and stuff like that. A family member was actually in one of the actual elections and quote unquote got to the, I guess must be the last polling section, and I guess was probably close. It just so happened the last polling section was the strongest, I guess, contingency of voters for that person. In other words, it was pretty much a sure win up until that last voting station was supposed to start counting their votes, and apparently somebody ran and jumped, grabbed the ballot box and ran and jumped in the ocean with it. Now, everybody had that for a big joke. It didn't feel too funny, I guess, considering at the time, considering it was a family member and stuff that had lost because of it. But things go to that extreme. I've heard people from them saying, no, they don't just thief the election, they be thieving in the polling stations. Now they let me realize and feel like it actually is for true. It's my bank card, still ain't turned up yet. I checked. Where I thought it could have possibly maybe slipped out other than in the polling station. I've been back to one place, been back to the other place. And I remember I didn't take it out to other places where I was at the night before I realized it was actually not in my wallet after the election day, the very next day. So, what if it's really spiritual stuff? As far as when you actually do mark your X's and properly, and nobody do no whole bunch of seemingly weird swindling or nothing like that. What if you're really supposed to be marking right who you want to actually win, instead of marking no as an X possibly for who you actually want to win? Which is why some of these elections don't be coming out the way people really be seeming or thinking they're supposed to be coming out based on how they vote. Just a thought. Some must be overthinkers. Yeah, some us.